Hello, welcome to the Eurogamer.net podcast number 105. I'm Tom Champion, and today, joining me, our two MMO experts, Mr. John Bedford.
Hello.
Hi, John.
Hi.
And Mr. Ollie Welsh.
Hi.
Hi, Ollie. I don't know why that sounded quite so camp. It's done now, isn't it? It's happened.
Yeah.
So today we are going to be talking World of Warcraft new expansion, Mists of Pandaria?
I think it is.
Pandaria.
Pandaria.
It's spelled Pandaria, is it not?
I don't think. Well, I don't know. It's Pandaria because they're all Americans.
Yeah.
That's a really good American accent. So who knows in English? I don't know.
Well, we'll muddle
I
on.
don't think it matters.
No.
It will be all right.
It's
John,
wow Pandas to give it its official title.
Pandas
Yeah.
lol. John, you were out at Blizzard HQ
Yes.
last week.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that. What is Blizzard HQ like exactly? What do all those millions of subscribers buy you in terms of office real estate?
Quite a nice campus, actually.
Campus?
Yeah, they kind of quite famously have this 15-foot tall solid bronze orc. It's not Thrall. We were informed by the guide. Riding a wolf, and it's about 15-foot tall, solid bronze, shipped in from China in two parts and welded together in their courtyard, which is the kind of thing I'd do if I found myself with a few billion in
Knocking
change.
around,
Just
yeah.
that statue of myself. Yeah, so it's a beautiful campus.
It's got lots of Blizzard's mission statements.
Etched around the
etched
statue.
into like a circle of brass around the statue. Things like
Embrace your inner geek.
Yeah, that's
one
one.
of them. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
And they've got
It's actually a company philosophy enshrined in metal.
metal lore.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and they've got sort of statues of all the characters like Arthas and Rayna from, I nearly said Space Marine. That's not good, is it?
It's not a great start, John. No. I'll be honest.
Yeah, and every time they do a BlizzCon, they sort of the fan convention, they commission an enormous statue of a famous character, and then after BlizzCon, they ship it into the office, and they're rapidly running out of space. But very, very impressive place.
Wonderful. I'm not a WoW man, so to speak.
In
But
so
I
many
did some
ways.
research this morning. Write down some bullet points about this new Mists of Pandaria expansion. I've got farms, dragons, drunk monkeys, pet fights, and monks.
Yep.
Is this a joke, John?
It's not, and there was... Ollie will probably be able to comment on this better than me. There was this strange... the way the message came out from BlizzCon, because we were kind of having a very similar conversation over Instant Messenger, weren't we? Where it was, Ollie's obviously at the show and he's seen all the details, and of course this reaction that just seemed to stick everywhere that wasn't at the show was just like, oh my god, pandas. And it was a really strange thing that the rest just didn't seem to... The rest of the message kind of got occluded by that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I did my best to report as much of it on the site as I could. Although John's had a lot more detail in the last week. A lot of the stuff they talked about last week was in the original BlizzCon presentations, but I think it was the kind of shock at the announcement, even though it had been leaked previously. It was seeing that it was actually real and that the expansion was very light-hearted and had a very different feel to what they've done previously, which has always been very sort of apocalyptic and epic. That I think that just kind of shocked people, and they just didn't hear the rest of the message come through.
Yeah.
Their ears were ringing after the word pandas, and they never really kind of picked themselves up from that.
Yeah.
It was quite frustrating reporting from BlizzCon last year, and you just weren't able to get anyone to listen to what they had to say about all of the features of the expansion, a lot of which I think are quite interesting. Saying all of that, it is definitely a change of direction. I mean, you can't mistake that they're changing course with the expansion on several levels. One is the tone. Yeah, it is more light-hearted and more kind of whimsical than what they've done before. And the other is the intended audience. I think they're obviously they're looking at China, but they're also looking at kids. Like, they want to go for younger fans because their older fans have probably been playing the game for 7 years now and are bored of it. And fair enough. And so a lot of the features, I think, kind of are angled slightly differently.
Yeah, okay.
And I think I actually put that point to Ray Kobo when we had an interview with him, that is this an attempt to sort of woo the Chinese market and a younger market? And he did say, well, yeah, there's not too many sort of German pandas or Australian pandas, so I think that's a
Yeah, I mean, as well, I think they're also trying to service a market that they already have, but they traditionally haven't serviced that well, which is the people who just like to muck around in the game.
Yeah.
Solo players or like fairly casual PvE players rather than hardcore raiders or the PvP crowd. Like all of their end game content has traditionally been aimed at their most hardcore fans, which makes sense, and the rest of the audience kind of comes and goes. But they're now thinking about servicing that slightly more casual, slightly less committed side of the WoW audience.
Yeah.
Because I think their reasoning is that the really hardcore players, they're either going to stick with the game because they don't know anything else, or they're after 7 years finally tapped out.
Okay. So, what were the new details that came out of this trip last week?
The farms was something I hadn't heard about.
No, that was absolutely brand new. They're doing this sort of the Farmville jokes were quick to form at the event. It's basically
so they can add that to Pokemon.
Well, there's a faction called the Tiller faction in the game, and they are the sort of
Has anyone told Ellie?
That's actually a very good point.
No, let's not.
No. So there's the Tiller faction, and you do an awful lot of daily quests for them when you reach the max level and expand your relationship with them, and that means you can grow additional crops. And we're assuming it's going to be instanced with the technology they brought in with Wrath of the Lich King, which is where they can phase the land effectively for people at different areas of different stages of a quest line.
Right.
And it's going to be tied into professions. So if you're a herbalist, you can plant some seeds and get some free herbs the next day. But there'll be livestock and everything, I understand.
Livestock as well. Are visitors going to be allowed into your farm?
That I don't know. It'll be quite a challenge, I think, unless they did it via party grouping or something.
I think party grouping, that ought to be possible. It's certainly how phasing works and how the similar systems work in Star Wars: The Old Republic. So, this is significant in a couple of ways. One is it's obviously a very casual thing, and it's aimed at people who just like to do sort of daily quests and rep grinding and that kind of side of the game. Also, what I think is cool is that it gives you something WoW never really has done before, which is a little bit of personal space, a little plot of Azeroth to call your own.
Okay.
Like they've never done player housing. They've never done any kind of sort of instant space that is kind of your character space. And I think
that'd be cool.
Quite reasonably, unlike a lot of other games, they give you these houses and there's nothing you do there really. You sort of access a stash or whatever. I think they always like to see gameplay function in their spaces, but I think they've come up with a nice medium here of something that serves a purpose in the game, ties into your professions and your faction grinding, but also it's just a little bit of the world that feels like yours.
Well, I hope they do evolve it into some kind of player housing area that you can invite people into, because it would be tremendously cool to be able to say, if you've killed Onyxia and you can hang her head over your fireplace.
I remember,
wonderful.
Yeah, that is a nice idea.
The Phantasy Star game. I'm not sure if the Dreamcast version had it, but certainly the version that came out on the last version had an area which you had your own room.
Yeah.
And an offshoot of that was a shop area, and you could stock your shop, and then you'd see people come in and they could buy stuff from your shop and then walk into your room as well, and you'd have all sorts of trophies and stuff in there, so like stuff you'd killed.
Yeah, they do that really well in Lord of the Rings Online. Actually, you can buy your own little.
But that's not something that WoW's ever had. That seems weird.
It's long been asked for, hasn't it? And it's always been the thing. Well, as with everything Blizzard do, when we think we can do it right, we will do it. But we won't just do it.
Yeah, or the other answer they always give is that it's on their feature list, and there's always something else that elbows it out. I think because they're gameplay guys at the end of the day, and they'd always rather put a new gameplay feature in than something that's essentially cosmetic like that. But yeah, I don't know. It's a bit of a shame. I mean, for me, like looking back to when I was a WoW player, it was the streets of Orgrimmar, that the cities that they created that felt like that had that kind of feeling of home and belonging to them. But I mean, for sure, it's well. For sure, it's a kind of a no-brainer of a feature. So it's cool to see them put something like that.
Any more details on the pet fight angle?
Yeah, we got
Pokemon
shown
style thing.
Yeah, we got shown only a very small amount of it. It was we got a sort of in their sort of theatre room we got a projected demo of it, and it was I think it was Arthas and Illidan they had with their little pets fighting against each other. And it was quite entertaining. I mean, it was kind of hard to see exactly what the combat abilities were and how it was going to work. It seemed to be a sort of, you go in with a few pets, you pick the ones you want, and you work for a sort of series of kind of like sort of Tekken tag or something. You pick the ones that you want to throw in there, and they counter, and then you sort of do a brief combat round.
And the main aim of it seems to be to just level up your pets and get cool abilities.
And there's going to be no sort of trash talk or bragging. I think you're not even going to know who you're facing off against. You'll manage your pets in an interface.
There must be a way. They must put it in a way for you to play your friends, though. Surely.
I'd be
really disappointed if they didn't do that. Yeah. That would be fun. I mean, it's always fun to play. I understand they want it to be a casual game, and they don't want it. Like Blizzard have this problem that anything competitive they put into their games, their audience, their fans are so hardcore about PvP, it instantly turns into a really hardcore esport. And you know, I'm sure they want to, like, as this is the same thing they're doing with Diablo 3 PvP at the moment. They're not even doing it, but they want to stop that happening. They want to produce like a casual, fun game, but not being able to play your friends or people you know seems a bit silly.
OTT. Protecting it.
Yeah. So, that would be a bit of a shame. So I fed you a little bit of information because I have heard speculation. I don't think it's really any more than that, but it seems to me to be quite well-informed speculation that this pet game is designed to be something that can be split off from the main World of Warcraft client and can run on an iPhone. So if you've got a WoW account, you can log in to your WoW account via your iPhone, and then you can play the pet battle game wherever you are. And that certainly seems like it's not going to have any great sort of demands in terms of connection or interface, and it can be presumably done quite low profile with quite a simple graphical interface. That seemed like quite plausible to me. So
and you're only talking about a handful of abilities as well, so an easy button press.
So I had you ask one of the dudes they gave.
John Legrave.
Producers. What
well,
happened?
You described it as a well-informed rumour that you'd heard, and I would go so far as to say that the reaction when that question was asked lent some weight to the well-informed.
Did they say anything at all, or did they just go white?
There was this sort of exchange of looks of, have we said that? We haven't said that. That's interesting that you should mention it.
Okay.
That kind of thing. But it also the possibility of things like phishing, which would be amazing. That would complete my life.
Phishing on your iPhone?
Yeah.
Okay.
And presumably they'd have to do that through some kind of instanced arrangement.
That's a tricky one because it's sort of in the world, whereas the pet battle thing is sort of outside of it. I don't know. Like I say, I mean, it's just speculation rather than an actual rumour, as far as I know. But I don't. It seems like logical to me, and I was interested to hear the reaction that John got.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did I see a news article where you'd pressed them about the main game being on the iPhone?
Yeah, and I think that's a problem that they've been toying around with for some time. But as I said to John, and received a good-natured no comment on Ordering Chaos Gameloft's Ordering Chaos. They've had a stab at it. I've played that. I mean, as a novelty, it was kind of good fun to play and go, holy shit, this is an MMO on a phone. But the way that they did it is nothing that Blizzard would ever sign off.
No, this is it. I mean, it's possible. It's been demonstrated via OnLive and Gaikai. I think
you can do it with
Gaikai
have as well on your iPad. You can, technically have it all right. You're running it on the PC and it's streaming, but.
Gaikai have included WoW in their demonstrations. They haven't licensed it, and this is the thing. I don't think Blizzard ever would, because it wouldn't meet their high demands of gameplay experience. But I mean, it can be done. It can be done quite easily. I think with an iPad-style screen, it's a bit more plausible. The thing is, though, with level 85 characters now, level 90 soon, the number of skills you have is just insane.
Look at the interface and the HUD and stuff.
There's crazy. Not enough space to put enough radial menus on an iPad.
I think that kind of old school MMO design is really going to struggle. What's quite interesting is when you look at a game like Guild Wars 2, which gives you sort of limited skill decks, or Diablo's the same to use. Those games are much more suitable for touchscreen, for smaller touchscreens. I still think phone is pushing it, but tablets
definitely,
like Guild Wars 2 ought to be like a really quite playable game on a tablet because you've only ever got 5 or, well, no, it's sort of 10 with the sort of passives, isn't it? But yeah.
Well, I mean, you wouldn't want to do any sort of group content. I mean, God help, no one wants to be in a heroic dungeon or a raid
with an
like
iPad
your healer
player,
on an iPad player. But I mean, if you think about sort of basic things like grinding or doing daily quests, you don't need that many spells to do it. Like if you with half a dozen, you can do an awful lot of sort of high fantasy genocide.
Saying that, you mentioned like a healer. I could imagine because
no.
something like that is so like controlling that is so complex and so sort of interface intensive. You see like the modified screens that like good healers use for World of Warcraft, and they can't actually see the game at all. They've just got
with the grid add-on, and
they've just got like a grid of bars and skills and like little skill bars next to each of their team members. Yeah, especially if they're doing a raid.
It's always used to be joked that it was like whack-a-mole.
So like you could conceivably split all of that off onto a touchscreen interface and then actually be able to look at the game.
I think the challenge I think is doing the movement. I hate gyroscopic movement, so I would never use that. But somehow controlling the camera and the movement with the abilities, because it is a mobile, in every sense of the word, a fluid mobile game.
Yeah, right.
The only thing I could imagine is having a series of action bars that you can flick sort of up and down on the screen with your finishing moves and what have you.
And these games aren't designed around it, but there's nothing to stop. The way MMOs work traditionally, there's nothing to stop people designing interfaces that work with touchscreens. It's not like an action game. They are kind of input intensive, but they're input intensive in a way that can work with touchscreens.
Well, I mean, WoW's an old game. Does a tablet even have the oomph to handle it?
Yeah. No,
the RAM available.
I mean, the problem you've got with iPad is they've particularly with the new ones, they've pushed the screen resolution to such ridiculous levels that the screen resolution is constantly staying like one step ahead of the graphical oomph of the machine.
Yeah.
So that is an issue that you're going to face. But like iPad 2 with the processor and graphics capability that it has and the screen resolution it has, I think could run WoW. If not beautifully, it could run it quite well, especially if they scaled some of the options down to sort of early rather than late WoW. Yeah. They could do it quite easily.
Okay. John, I was reading your preview.
Thank you.
Very nice it was too. And I delved into the comments thread afterwards.
Yeah.
And overwhelmingly, the reactions seem to be quite negative. Not about your writing.
Thank you.
More about the game itself, the prospect of the expansion. I can't recall a single positive reaction. There was a lot of experienced WoW players in there.
There's a couple. I think a lot of it, and I mean, this is like huge speculation. There's a lot of people have been playing this game for a long time, as I had. I had a good chunk of a break, which did me the world of good. Obviously, if you read some of my earlier pieces about Warcraft, that was a good idea.
Multi-boxed, didn't you?
Oh,
that's
God.
dark.
That's really
dark.
Yeah, so
nobody should ever multi-box.
No,
that sounds frightening.
Yeah. No, I was controlling a team of 5 doing heroic dungeons, doing a healer and a tank. It's not good.
So were you paying multiple subscriptions? Or were you...
Yeah, I just had 2 monitors, one with the main character, like the tank, and then I'll do the healing in 4 accounts split into 4 boxes on the second window. It was awesome.
Did your family have some sort of intervention?
Yeah, my other half wasn't particularly.
Basically, the difference between playing WoW in a normal way and multi-boxing is the difference between going out and getting trashed and getting trashed sat on your own at home. it's full blown.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, it's full blown alcoholism.
Yeah, yep.
Drinking gin from the bottle
at 7 a.m.
Yeah, happy days. Sorry, I was saying the reaction.
Yes,
I do wonder if a lot of people are just almost like almost want an excuse to stop playing. They'll either play too much, or they're bored of raiding, but they're stuck in it with friends. Or I don't know whether there's a certain amount of almost Blizzard have chucked them a lifeline to say enough.
Okay.
I don't know. As I say, I felt more confident about the expansion after seeing it and having a hands-on and sort of seeing everything in the flesh compared to when we were chatting during BlizzCon.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think Cataclysm was interesting because the response to the expansion before it came out was generally positive. I think some people had some issue with the amount of work they were pouring into the older zones, but people were really looking forward to it. Lich King had been fantastic. Everyone agreed about that. And then Cataclysm proved to be quite divisive, and actually quite a lot of people were annoyed with it. And they did make some mistakes, but my feeling was quite strongly that people were just bored. They'd had enough.
Yeah.
And I think people are going to make decisions about whether or not they play World of Warcraft fairly independently about whether or not they like the idea of this expansion. There's lots of people out there who do like the sound of this expansion who still won't go back to play the game. I'm one of them, just because 7 years was enough for me. And there are lots of other people who don't like the sound of this expansion, will probably hate about it and will moan about it constantly and continue to pay their subscriptions for another year after it comes out, at least, because they just want to play World of Warcraft, and they will play whatever they're given.
I'd say when I came back from the event, I spent this weekend on something of a 20-hour binge on World of Warcraft.
I hope you weren't multi-boxing, John.
No.
A really interesting thing that came out, not of this event, but last week out of the Diablo 3 release date, was you know that they've included a free copy of Diablo 3 with World of Warcraft annual subscription, with a new annual pass they've done, and they've sold 1 million of those annual passes. Now, obviously, that was a very canny move to protect WoW subs from
their own
people
customers.
their own customers.
It's really
people who wanted to
strange.
play Diablo 3 and were like, oh, maybe I'll put so much time in Diablo, it won't be worth paying for WoW. Well, this way, you don't need to worry about it. You feel like you're getting value either way. But it's worked. And I was like, well, they're losing subscribers. If there's still 1 million people out there who are willing to say, I will definitely sign up for a whole extra year of WoW, they're still such a really enormously long way from being in any kind of trouble with supporting this game. So.
What happens if you stop your instalments? Because it's an instalment-based subscription, isn't it? Do you lose access to Diablo 3 once it's released? I mean,
I don't.
So you don't play it up front?
No, you can't stop your instalments. It's like you can't stop your instalments for your TV license. No. You agree to pay the full amount, and then you just pay that in instalments.
Yeah, okay. So it's a big year for WoW in terms of competition. Old Republic's come out, Guild Wars 2 due out at some point this year. Were you able to press them at all about that?
Yeah, we had a piece of news go up a couple of hours ago in this conversation with John,
right?
And this was just talking about our people going to the Old Republic and playing that, and fairly candid in saying we don't have all the best games in the world, so we can't lock people down to what we do.
There was a catty bit though, wasn't it? Where it says,
well, I think I'm the only one left playing in the office.
This. Yeah. I think I'm one of the few who's still playing it. Yeah, I'm sure the entirety of Blizzard staff jumped on. In fact, I heard a little bird told me that work kind of ground to their halt at their office for a few days while everybody checked out the Old Republic, and I'm sure that was the same with a lot of game developers, particularly in the MMO sphere. But they don't have a. Yeah.
It was quite funny at the event itself because there was just this flurry of journalists in a panic because we had so much information in the morning. 2 20-minute interviews to prepare questions for and have a think about. So you're assuming you're going to have to ask so much, about the pet battles, about all this kind of thing. And there was this sort of panic when we were given all of the information anyone would possibly have wanted to know about the expansion. And so you end up sitting in a room and thinking, well, I'm pretty much left with the where are your 2 million subscribers gone to questions, which is always a great way to open up a chat with someone.
You leave that for the end, John. Yeah. Soften them up.
Do you want to read the questions?
Go for it.
Well, that's a good job you didn't say no, because happening anyway. Nemot wants to know, he says the new expansion doesn't have a central adversary. How do you think the expansion will fare without that?
Well, again, and this is slightly spoilerish, but we were told this at the preview event, you will face off against Garrosh Hellscream, the current leader of the Horde. That will be an assault on Orgrimmar. So he will become the centre villain in a way. But I think their focus was very much on bringing the war back between the Alliance and the Horde. So I think there's going to be a greater focus on that. One thing they were really keen...
that's super cool, especially because like Horde players such as myself used to love Thrall and used to, the kind of ethos of the Horde is that you look like the bad guys, but you're just trying to make it work, and you all come from hard circumstances. Then having a leader who actually was a bad guy, who since Cataclysm, but he sort of started building him up with the Lich King expansion. It's rankled with Horde players, especially touchy-feely Taurans and all the rest of them. So I think that's really cool. I think it's nice to have a faction chief who both factions can sort of conceivably face off against, like happened with the Undercity in Lich King as well. So
I think they've realised they've got to really ramp up the content patches as well. I think that's going to be very different.
Yeah, we'll see. They've been saying that they're going to do that for many years now, and I think their quality control is always going to throttle that process.
Nemosis says, are Blizzard adding free-to-play elements to commodify, e.g. farming, Pokemon-style bastards, etc.? Are Blizzard trying to move over to a freemium model as they lose subscriptions?
Well, the only thing to say on that, the one thing that John LeGros said, which was really interesting, is talking about this free trial. The one it's up to level 20, you've got it for as long as you want. That looked like that hurt.
Yeah, kick the table.
I think what they're doing is they don't want to go down the free-to-play route. They've got a healthy subscription, numbers, even if they're dropping, it's still an awful lot. And I think what they're going to do is they're going to use this free trial as almost their test bed for free-to-play. What they will do, because he mentioned, we could give you up to level 40, we could let you level up to level 60 all the way. I think they're probably prepared to use their old world game to kind of get people further through the door.
I think they're such a long way from needing to do this. Like a really, really, like they are losing subscribers, and it's probably, we know that they've lost a couple of million, but it's probably a lot worse than that. But when you're starting from 12 million, and other people are going to free to play because they can't keep 300,000 subscribers.
Yeah,
it's just. I just don't really see where it becomes worthwhile to them. Where I can't really see the tipping point where they're certain they're going to make more money, because they'd have to reach an audience of like 40, 50 million people to have a freemium business model that made sense versus subscriptions. The subscriptions they're getting at the moment, which is just it's feasible. There are that many people playing games like, in theory, League of Legends or World of Tanks, but. Again, it's also very, very strongly focused on Russia and Korea and China at the moment, and they still have a very big audience in the US and Europe, where free-to-play is a tougher business proposition. So I just don't really see them needing to do it. The other thing is they've introduced lots of additional transactions, things like account services, and selling pets and mounts and stuff, which they're having great success getting people to pay on top of their subscription. So I don't know. I mean, I do believe them when they say that they feel that a game should be designed for a business model, and that World of Warcraft wasn't, and that offers a stupid amount of content and value for your subscription. So they don't want to change that. I'm sure they've got a team looking at it and looking at when the right moment would be to make that transition if they had to. But I'm equally sure that it's a really long way off. I mean, that's my personal feeling. I've talked to people who think they're going to announce it next year, but I just don't believe that.
I can't imagine they'd make an announcement based on a decision that might happen in a year. Do you know what I mean? It's like...
Oh, yeah. I don't think you want to make
any
in a year,
noises
I think
about the market will be like this,
changing to a free model at any point, do you? No. Final question. Street Magic says, do you think there'll be another expansion for WoW, or will Blizzard dedicate everyone to the next MMO?
No, I think they'll keep WoW going. I mean...
Do you think there'll be another big expansion?
Yeah, I'm sure. I think they've already said they're committed to 100 at least, haven't they? They've said in the past, 100,
not 100 expansions.
No, good God. Please.
I think so. I think it is conceivable that they will change the model, so they stop making them big deal box launchers.
Yeah.
And they turn them into paid for downloads perhaps. But again, it's the same as with the subscriptions with going to free to play. The audience is so big, and I'm certain that with their next game they don't really want to cannibalise WoW's audience. They want to find a new audience or get back all those people who got fed up with WoW and have gone to play Guild Wars or Star Wars or whatever. And I don't really expect they're thinking about it like that. And indeed, because it's been proven so many times that you can't really, at least with subscription games, you can't migrate your audience like that. Like Sony Online Entertainment tried it with EverQuest, and they ended up just halving the audience for the original EverQuest. and they're having half the size of the audience again for EverQuest 2.
You just
and
cannibalise your audience.
And they probably lost out as a result, rather than what they should have done was keep servicing EverQuest, pour more resources into that, and then make a different game that they could have moved people onto instead.
I have to say the most exciting part of that trip, I think I said this to you, was standing by this orc statue in the middle of their courtyard and having this knowledge that within like 100-metre radius around you, somewhere in this building, people were working on Titan, and it's kind of like you're so close but so far.
Yeah.
And I think that was it's really cool to just think something's going on somewhere around here, and I just can't get my hands on it.
It's fun, and it's a proper secret as well.
Mm.
We
Oh, it's
don't really know
incredible,
anything
isn't it?
about it other than it's probably going to have in-game merchandising, so that you know that says certain things about what the business model.
Do you see Diablo as a test bed for that? Do you think this auction house is a trial?
I think, well, I mean, if it works really well, certainly they'll consider it. Again, the auction house is something that they argue works very well with Diablo's design. So a different designer game might have a different requirement. But Diablo is certainly going to be, it's going to be interesting to see how much money they can make from something that's not a game subscription for an ongoing online game. And certainly, like, their costs are immense. Not only do they spend 7 years making their games to incredibly high standard, but they have very high standards of customer service and a huge audience that needs good online features as well. So, you know, they've got to have cash flow to support that. I don't think StarCraft is making enough money, to be honest. So I think they need Diablo to make a good amount of money from the auction house, and I certainly think they'll be looking at how well that does before they make the final decision about how Titan works. But if the game's going to be different from WoW, and WoW is a subscription game, that's as good an argument as any that it won't, be a subscription game.
There we are. In other MMO-related news, John Bedford, you're off to
FanFest?
Eve's FanFest.
Very excited. Going tomorrow. Yeah.
Looking forward to that, mate?
Yeah. No, it's a really, really cool event. I won't be doing what I did last year, which was to get so blasted on cheap Icelandic lager that I was hungover for the next 5 days.
You're aware you're saying this is being recorded, and we can play this back to you.
Yeah. No,
at deafening volume the day you get back.
No, I mean, FanFest is always my favourite thing to go and see. Because the community is so unique, I think, to any MMO, and that relationship between the developers and the people playing is a solidly genuine one, even ignoring the.
It's going to be interesting this year. Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Is it going to be quite as much of a group hug as it has been? I mean, group hug is not really a phrase that works with Eve players because they don't really do physical contact, and you probably wouldn't want to either. But it's still a pretty warm and fuzzy event.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Good stuff. Okay, well, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much, John Bedford.
Thank you.
And Ollie Welsh, thank you. I've been
Thanks.
Tom Champion. Thanks for listening. See you next week. Bye.
Bye.